Hi, everyone. I'm super excited to be with everyone tonight. Oops, you know what? My stream is using the wrong camera. So we're not going to worry about it. So I am super excited to be here tonight because I absolutely love this story. I'm going to move my little slide deck around here. It's good to see you, Deb. Oh, and it's Liz. Oh, so nice to see you, Liz. I'm so glad you're here tonight. This story is one that I have taught many, many times. And there is so much in this story that actually when I was preparing for tonight, I was thinking to myself, I wonder if I should have done this over 2 classes because there is so much here. I think that we really could probably talk about this story for like 5 or 6 days. So, okay, I see Michael's note that Liz is here, and so you're going to be sharing, and we'll be able to tell who's. All right, thanks for that clarification. All right, well, let's jump into the Scarlet Ibis and the question that we have to answer, which is, did he kill his brother? So that's what we got to find out. So let's go here. So I wonder this question. Have you ever gotten what you wanted and then realized you didn't really want it? I think that is one of the questions that this story asks, because in some ways, the protagonist or the narrator gets what he wants, but we don't really know how he feels about it. So Michael says, 2 classes for a 6-page story. Oh, yes. I could probably really do 5. So a lot of this story looks at that idea. All right, let's see your ratings here. Scale of 1 to 5. Now, I will say he didn't give me a rating, but Mark C. let me know that he had a friend's birthday party tonight, so he's not going to be joining us, but he read it and liked the story. Is there something wrong?
It's good. It's showing the PowerPoint header in there.
I know I can't. That's what I tried. Mr. Vanstar is saying that it's showing the PowerPoint header, and I'm telling him that I actually tried to fix that right before I went live, and it messed it all up. Yeah, so it's something I'm just going to have to work on next time. Ooh, Michael gives it a 5. Thank you, Michael. I think you're going to like it even more. And for next class, I'll try to figure out how to make it show better. I don't know what happened. So, all right. So thank you, Stars, for these comments. I had to go way back. I went to the Wayback Machine and got comments from the first King Arthur discussion. So that's where these are from, the first King Arthur. So L gives it a 5 as well. All right, Dracon with his 3.14 and Kiddo 39 with a 5. All right. So Kiddo 39, I don't recognize that handle. So if this is your first time with us, welcome. Okay, so we're back on talking about Arthur, and Christiana said, I think some stories are best left behind. And I'm saying truth. This was the question of, is it better sometimes for a story just to go, and other stories be preserved over time? And I think she's right. Like, some stories, they just don't hold on well. They just don't keep, right? They have a short shelf life. Ethan was joking about when we were talking about the name of this sword, Clarence, that it just didn't seem very, really? He's been here as long as you? I don't know why I didn't recognize it. Well, welcome back. So it is true that names convey this power, and I thought Ethan was funny. So Mark C., I love this line that people try to change their destiny with magic all the time, but it doesn't work. So this discussion of it is powerful. And this was so funny. Ethan says, this is King Arthur speaking. Well, Merlin, you were right all those other times, so I'm just going to go ahead and ignore you. And Mark C. again, Merlin, don't marry this girl. She will be your downfall. Arthur, Merlin, I'd like you to be my best man. And then Lee Weinberger, which I just loved this so much, that beauty is a catfish. And that idea of oh, he's your brother. Has he always, okay, so let's clarify this then. has he always used that same, have you always used that same handle? Or did you maybe share a handle? Like, I don't know why I did. Anyway, I thought this was so true. Like, beauty is something that pretends to be one thing, but then is not. All right. So Ethan says, you know, what would be super funny is if they made the King Arthur story into like a reality TV show. And Christiana says, Keeping Up with the Kings coming soon. And I just thought that was so funny. I thought that was really true. And a really good idea. Oops. Sorry, I didn't mean to stop my cam. I'm trying to see if I can force it to switch. I'm going to. Oh, okay, there we go. All right, here I am. I'm back. I tried to switch the camera to the right camera, but then it said it couldn't find the camera. And when it did that, it took off the video or the audio as well. So anyway, sorry about that, everyone. We have our own reality show, right? Like the reality show of Mrs. Van trying to do a live stream. All right. And then Mark C said this chat is amazing. And it was funny because I was reading through the chat and like pulling out the comments. And I was thinking to myself, this chat was amazing. And then I came to Mark's comment and it was, this chat is amazing. And I thought, you're right. All right. So are we ready to dive into Scarlet Ibis? Because I totally am. I love this story so much. All right. So again, we're going to revisit the plot with our exposition / backstory, inciting incident, rising action, climax, falling action, and then the resolution. So the story is, the backstory is this boy in a small southern town has a disabled brother. So this is kind of what we have going in. And to me, the inciting incident is when he looks through the bars of Doodle's crib and, oh, hey, Drew. And Doodle looks right at him. And he's like, he's all there because his mom had told him, I don't think he's all there, right? And so to me, that's the inciting incident. That's the moment when the narrator realizes this kid isn't going to die. He's not going to go in that mahogany coffin that they've got ready for him. He's going to be a real person and he's in there somewhere, right? So then we have this rising action that is mostly, teaching Doodle to walk, the Scarlet Ibis dying in the yard, trying to teach Doodle like lots of things like how to row and how to swim and how to do all this stuff. His like Doodle extreme makeover Doodle edition that he's got going on. The climax is in the storm when they're out on the swamp, when Doodle says, brother, don't leave me. That is this moment of great emotional intensity. And then as a falling action, Doodle is left behind. And then the resolution, he returns and he finds Doodle, spoiler alert, dead. So that is the plot as I plotted it out. If you guys have any other thoughts, let me know. I think this is an interesting one. No, Drew, I haven't seen Cookie. I think this is an interesting one because a lot of times in stories like this, told with this structure, story structure, organizational structure, they would return again at the end to the beginning, but this one doesn't. So that I think you could play around with what you consider to be the resolution, because the resolution could actually be the beginning of the story. I don't know if any of you have spoiler in class analyzing the story. Well, I know that not everybody has read it. So, okay. So this is my question. Do you think that the first paragraph of the story, and really those first two paragraphs, can they be considered part of the resolution because the story is told as a flashback? Because it's a flashback. I know, right? That's the hashtag we need, Drew. You're right. So I was thinking about, oh, hey, Cloudfall, welcome. So as I was reading these first two paragraphs, it made me think of something. So there's this author named Dan Pink, who I really like, and he's writing a book on regret, and he's doing this big world regret survey to gather data for his book. And he's received thousands of responses, right? 15,000 responses. And he shows some of the results of it. So I just took a screenshot of what he shows. So there's a lot of text here, but he says that most people regretted things they didn't do. And there were specific regrets that were really common, like not pursuing higher education, turning down opportunities to travel, missing a final chance to connect with loved ones. And it says, many of the regrets were moral failings earlier in life. And I couldn't help but think that if the narrator of this story took the World Regret Survey, that he would probably put that, like a moral failing early in life. So, So I'm curious, what is something that you regret? In this, I'll go back right here so you can see that it says that one of the most common things was people regretted living someone else's life. And also the most regrets were things, if you look up here, that they didn't do rather than things they did. So what's something that you regret not doing or not saying? Not doing or not saying. While you share yours with me, I'll tell you a regret I have. So my grandmother, I was very, very close to her, but occasionally she could really get on my nerves. And one time she made me really mad about something. And now looking back on it, I realized how small of a thing it was. But I was supposed to go visit her and I decided not to. And I postponed my visit. I ended up going much, much later and I didn't go that time. I did see her again, but she died really not that long after. And I really wish I had not let myself worry about that one small thing and gone and seen her. So I do regret not going to see her. So I'm curious about something that you guys regret not doing or not saying, like not something that you did that you regret, but something that you didn't do that you regret. Also, Coatneys, for this weekend, I hope that you are not affected by that hurricane that's coming. So Arthur Miller is the playwright who wrote Death of a Salesman. And he said, maybe all one can do is hope to end up with the right regrets. I thought that was so powerful, the idea of ending up with the right regrets. Okay, so I have a question for you. Would you rather be known, like if you were a writer, okay, you're an author, would you rather be known for 15 stories that were like moderately good? People are like, yeah, they're okay stories. Or only one story, like you wrote all these stories, but people only remembered one of them, but they remembered that it as being amazing. But basically everything else you did was forgotten. Okay, oops. Sorry about that, everyone. Just trying to move this so I can see the chat. Okay, let's see. Grandpa died, and while I feel like I knew him well, I regret not having got to know him better. Yeah. Shoving Michael in a pond is something that you did, Liz. I want to regret of something that you didn't do. Okay, Cloudfall did his science fair project, and you totally failed to run it. Oh. Wait a second. When I go. One amazing story all the way. Yeah. Okay, so I'm waiting to hear Liz's regret still. So I'm curious about, okay, the second one, and you do, oh, wow, you guys all picked that. Well, then you understand this author because the author of the story, his name is James Hurst, and he is from the town of Jacksonville, North Carolina. Now there's a Jacksonville, Florida. Oh, you regret not shoving Michael into a pond. Oh, that's not nice. You see Jacksonville, it's here on the map. It's just north of Wilmington, North Carolina. And that where you see where it says Onslow Bay, that's where his family lived. They lived on a farm right against the water. It is now a Marine base, actually. And the Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, is on the ground that was his family's farm. So he he ended up going off and fighting in World War I for several years. When he came home from the war, he decided that he wanted to be an opera singer. And so he got accepted to Juilliard, and he went to Juilliard to study opera. But he decided to go live in Europe for a while to do that. So he lived in Italy for 4 years trying to develop his opera career. But he realized that he didn't have the talent. So he came back to New York, and he got a job as a banker at Chase Manhattan Bank in New York. And he worked in the international department. He worked there for 30-something years until his retirement. And for the first 10 years that he was there, he wrote stories on the side. Like, he had a side hustle writing short stories, and they didn't really go anywhere, right? He's just like at night writing these stories after he's been doing this banking, right? Until in 1960, in July of 1960, the Atlantic Monthly, which is still a very highly regarded magazine, the Atlantic Monthly published this story, The Scarlet Ibis, in its July edition. And it was like a Southern edition. You could see this title piece was called To Live and Die in Dixie, which is a line from a song. And so that is what made it. He ended up winning their prize for fiction for the year, the best story. And since that time, this story has been in virtually every high school and college literature textbook printed since then. He says, this is James Hurst, he says that there are 3 characters in the story: the narrator, Doodle, and the setting. And I think that is a really interesting take. So one thing that I also thought was interesting is I went and found his Find a Grave memorial, because, I do that with our authors who have passed away. And he died at the age of 91, and in the very same town where he was born. But if you go to his memorial, you see that like he was alone. He lived in like a retirement place. He didn't have any children. He never had any children. I don't know if he ever married. I couldn't find that information, but he wasn't married when he died, and he didn't have a wife who predeceased him. There's also some other sadness. I hate it when I do that. There's also some other sadness here. So in the Find a Grave memorial, you can see these other family members, and there are his parents, and then a brother who died like 20 years before him, and then an infant, and that infant is actually a girl. And she died before he was born, and her mother died in childbirth. So his father was married, and his wife and baby died when the baby was born. And then like 10 years later, he remarried the woman who would become the mother of his 2 sons who survived. You can kind of see at the bottom here, in memory of a great storyteller and human, I left those flowers from us. It says from the Vanstars. But I just think it's so interesting that you could be so famous that your story could be in every book, and yet that when you die, it's just, yeah. Anyway, it was just sad. It was just sad. It's not his only published story, Michael, but it's his only one that really went anywhere. It's the only people who read the other stories are people who are focusing on him as an author. Like, they're not included in any anthologies. You have to really kind of hunt to find them. Yeah. So after his death, The Scarlet Ibis was turned into an opera. And I wonder how you think Hurst would feel about it, knowing that he wanted to be an opera singer. Like, do you think he would be happy that they made it an opera because he loved opera? Or do you feel like he would be sad that they didn't do it while he was alive to do it, or that he couldn't be in it? Like, what do you think? The opera came out like in 2018 or 2019. And so it didn't really get a chance to do that much because of the virus that must not be named. But that's what happened. So I'm curious about whether you think, what you think he thinks about that. All right. So that's James Hurst. And yeah, I think it is an amazing memorial. I don't know how he would have felt. I just don't know. It's a hard thing. I really thought about it for a long time. Okay, so we're off into the story. All right, how English teachers see the story. Look at all the literary devices. Let me spin around, right? Yay. And then his students are like, this is too much heartbreak, man, right? Okay, he would feel, yeah, oh, Clefall, that's a nice way to approach that. So, warning, deep first paragraph ahead. We're going to take it right in here. It says, it was in the clove of seasons. Summer was dead, but autumn had not yet been born, that the ibis lit in the bleeding tree. What's interesting is that here the narrator is telling us what he thinks sets this story in motion. So he's basically saying, for my purposes, this is the inciting incident, right? That when the ibis lands in the tree. So let's look at this. The clove of seasons. So that is not a normal idiomatic expression. I have, other than this story, never heard anybody say that. So it's not common. Maybe it's common where he lived or grew up as a saying, but it's not a typical common saying. And but a clove can be two things. A clove can be, like you're probably used to a clove of garlic, a part of a bulb, but it can also be a form of the verb to cleave, to divide in half. But cleave can also mean come together. So that's kind of weird. Cleave is a really weird word. Like you can have a cleaver, which is a knife with a really big blade and you just hack stuff. But then also, like in the Bible, it says, a man shall leave his father and a woman leave her parents and they shall cleave to each other and none else. So cleave can also be this tight coming together. And so here, the clove of seasons is like this division of seasons. Summer was dead, but the autumn had not yet been born. So we've got this personification already there. And then the ibis lit in the bleeding tree. Okay, so lit is an also unusual form. So the word light, we usually mean to be like light shining on you, or something isn't heavy, it's light. But there's another meaning of light, which is to like land on something. So a bird will land in a tree. We can say it lighted on the branch, or here it lit in the bleeding tree. It doesn't mean it lit it up, like light it up. It doesn't mean like that. It means I landed there. And then the bleeding tree. So this is something that's interesting because if you look at a bunch of analysis of this story, some people say the bleeding tree is a particular kind of Dracaena palm that when its sap is like red, and that's what he's talking about. But most people don't think that's what he's talking about because that tree doesn't actually grow where he lived, and those are the plants he used too. So it's not lit like marijuana. But so the bleeding tree is probably a fruit tree like a pear or a peach that is weeping sap, and sap can look like dark and almost blood-like, but also a tree sap is its blood. And so this tree is like a sick and dying tree because it's like bleeding sap. But look at all of this imagery, look at all this figurative language in one sentence. And it just keeps going. The flower garden was stained with rotting brown magnolia petals, and ironweeds grew rank amid the purple phlox. So rank can have two meanings. Rank most commonly is used to mean it like smells bad. It's like sour. Like if a teenage boy doesn't clean his room for a few weeks and his laundry is piled up in there, and you open the door and you'll be, whoa, that's rank. Or if you have spoiled food in the fridge, that can be rank. But rank can also mean like overgrown and tangled. And so in this particular instance, I think it means tangled and overgrown. The contemporary of the phoenix going around lighting trees on fire. That's funny. The 5 o'clock, so this is still the same paragraph. The 5 o'clocks, which are flower that bloom at that time, by the chimney still marked time, but the oriole nest in the elm was untenanted and rocked back and forth like an empty cradle. The last graveyard flowers were blooming, and their smell drifted across the cotton field and through every room of our house, speaking softly the name of our dead. It's just so evocative. You know what? Let me talk about a couple of these things here first. This use of the word untenanted, instead of just empty, right? Like not just there was an empty bird's nest, but the oriole nest. So now I know even what kind of flower was untenanted. It's a stronger word. And I love this story for teaching writing. I haven't seen Tessa tonight, and that's too bad because I know she wants to write, and this is such a good story for writers. And then the simile of rocking back and forth like an empty cradle, which is there anything more sad, right? Graveyard flowers are blooming. Those are gardenias. A lot of people plant gardenias at graves, and they smell delicious. And so it's like you've got these graveyard flowers, these gardenias, and the smell of them is wafting through the house. And it's like, remember that this person has died, that this person has died. So I want to, sorry about that. I want to look at the difference between tone and mood. So tone, and the kids get these confused all the time. Like even adults get these confused all the time. So yeah, poor Doodle. So tone is the attitude that the writer has towards the subject. And the words that we use to describe tone can be the same as the words that we use to describe mood, which is partly what makes it so confusing. But a tone is like, does the author feel sarcastic? Does the author feel flippant? How is the author treating this? Okay. And an author conveys their tone through word choice and also through their style, right? Like sentence structure and punctuation give this feeling. Like, is the author taking this very seriously? You know, like, are there semicolons or are there lots of em dashes and exclamation marks? And so the author conveys tone that way. Mood is the overall feeling or atmosphere. Like, what does this story feel like? And the way that the author conveys that is most of the time through figurative language, like imagery, mostly imagery, and then literary devices, similes, metaphors, personification, all of that. Okay, let's see. The tone is set by the host and the mood is determined by the guests. I don't, you know what, Cloudfall? While I usually love stuff like that, I don't completely agree because in a story, the guests would be the readers. And here the readers are not the ones who set the tone. The author sets both. The author sets the tone and the mood. The tone reveals the author's attitude and the mood is the feeling that the author is trying to create, like the atmosphere, almost like in a restaurant, like the atmosphere in a restaurant. So I usually love helps like that. But in this case, I don't know that I would agree that it's fully accurate. All right, so pick a mood, any mood. I want you guys to tell me what mood you think of these. I just gave you 4 choices, but of these 4 choices, which ones would you pick to agree that they said it? No, I don't think you're explaining it badly. Maybe I'm misunderstanding who the guests are. But what do you think is the mood? How would you describe the mood out of these choices? Is it mysterious, tense, melancholy, or gloomy? Melancholy and gloomy. Who else has ideas? All right. So it says, okay, a couple of votes for melancholy. I know Liz's vote will be coming in here. So, and Clubhall says, yep, melancholy. And then the narrator says, and the narrator is never named. That's why I keep calling him the narrator. It's strange that all this is so clear to me now that summer has long since fled and time has had its way. Oh my goodness, the personification in this story, it just doesn't quit. It goes on and on and on. All right, and this is the second paragraph. A grindstone stands where the bleeding tree stood, right? Remember that tree was dying, so it's dead now, and there's a grindstone there. I'm going to show you a picture of one in a second, just outside the kitchen door. And now if an oriole sings in the element, song seems to die up in the leaves, a silvery dust. And then there's this strong juxtaposition, because look at this strong juxtaposition. There's like this still like gloomy and melancholy thing of, you know, there's no tree anymore. There's this grindstone there. If a songbird sings, it just gets like died. It just dies. Everything is dead. And then you get the flower garden is prim, meaning like neat and tidy. The house is gleaming white. The fence is in really good condition. And it's just like this complete juxtaposition of these two things, this one thing in beautiful, perfect, pristine condition, and this other thing that's all dark and has this feeling of like an abandoned home almost. And then he says, but sometimes like right now, which is so interesting because that phrase, like right now, just gives us such a cool feeling, like he's telling us a story, like we've come into the parlor and we're sitting across from him and he's telling us the story. And he says, the grindstone begins to turn and time with all its changes is ground away and I remember Doodle. And now we know, oh, okay, we don't know who Doodle is, but we can tell this is going to be important. So this is a grindstone. And you would have one out there because you would grind tools with it. So like you would grind the edge of your hoe and to sharpen it, right? So in this one, it's like on a pedal mechanism. So you sit on that little seat. But it's no coincidence that that's what replaces the tree. Because in the New Testament, Jesus says, but if anyone causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a millstone hung around his neck and drown in the depths of the sea. So I don't think that it's an accident that Hurst uses this imagery. Ugh, it happened again. All right, so in those first two paragraphs, we had that first paragraph and then the second one we just did. Do you think that the first paragraph and second paragraph, that the second paragraph has the same mood and tone as the first, or is there a different one, or did the second paragraph deepen the mood and the tone? What do you think? What do you think? What was the effect of that second paragraph? If you have your copy of the story, you might need to glance at it. I'm going to keep going, but I'm going to come back and look at these. All right, so this story is a structure called flashback. We know that, right? We're all familiar with it. If you would like to get all super fancy, you can use its official term, which is analepsis. Analepsis is the fancy English teacher word for flashback. And so we have flashback for a few purposes. It is a pretty common story structure. It can give coherence, right? Like, so I will tell a story in flashback by setting the story up, by giving some context in the beginning. Then I can make this story feel more coherent. People aren't going to be as lost while they're reading or watching the story. I can also use it to develop a character. And I can, as an author, also use it to create a narrative structure. It's just like a structure. It's just a structural choice. All right, so, okay, it deepens or the same or shifts from gloomy to melancholy. Interesting. Okay, so let's talk about Doodle. I've got 6 characteristics of Doodle, or 6 facts about Doodle. First, he's born when the protagonist is 6 years old. He was supposed to die when he was born. They don't even give him a name till he's 3 months old, and they're like, oh, I guess he's not going to die. Might as well give him a name. And they give him the name William Armstrong, which the narrator says only sounds good on a tombstone. And then when he's 2 years old, the narrator renames him Doodlebug, and then they call him Doodle. And he's described as a burden in many ways. He's clearly not healthy, right? He's clearly not healthy. This is a doodlebug. So doodlebugs are actually the larva of the antlion. So an antlion is not a lion and it is not an ant. It actually eats ants. It digs these. You've probably seen these. They're like little sand piles. I should put a picture of one of these in there. They're like little sand piles. They're round and they have a tiny hole in the middle. They have a hole in the middle and sand piled up around the side. Ants fall in there and then the antlion eats them. Antlions look like they're a flying insect that look a little bit like a butterfly that got shrunk in the dryer. These are their larvae. The larvae are way more interesting. They're kind of scary looking. This one is covered with sand because it came out of one of those holes, but they can only move by going backwards. They scoot along backwards. So that's how it gives them this name Doodlebug. But what's also interesting is that in like probably the 17th century, the word doodlebug and doodle, like a doodle was someone who was like the village idiot, right? Like someone who was mentally handicapped, and it was a pejorative term. And so there's kind of these two meanings in the story. It says that he names him this because of the way that he moves, but also a doodle is someone who has mental deficiency. And so there's this double meaning there. It's common, I think, to name a child quite a while before birth. You know, I think that's more common now, Michael, to pick out names for kids before. A lot of time, I know I have seen birth certificates that just say like baby, and I think that you have a year. And I know people who've named their kid one thing and then changed it to something else. So that's crazy. Okay. So I think one of the problems here with the brother is that there's this expectation and then there's reality. So the expectation that the narrator has is that he's going to have this brother and they're going to go, you know, hunt. They're going to go fishing and running and playing and climbing trees. And then the actuality is that Doodle just lies there. And I think that's part of the real issue in the story is that there's this expectation of what Doodle will be. And when he doesn't meet that expectation, then that leads to frustration, right? And my stepdad says expectations are nothing more than preconceived resentments. And that does really seem to be true. Yeah. Yeah, Cloudfall, I think you're right about that. So he says, it was bad enough having an invalid brother, but having one who was possibly not all there was unbearable. So I began to make plans to kill him by smothering him with a pillow. As you do. Like, I was just so random, right? Like, not like, so I just decided I was going to have to make some other friends. And you know, the thing that's weird is that he's 6 years younger. Like, that's a lot younger. That's more younger, right? Like, that's not just a couple of years. 6 years is a lot. So anyway, I just thought that was so hysterical. So I'm just going to kill him by smothering him. So I know, darkness. However, one afternoon, lucky for Doodle, one afternoon, as I watched him, my head poked between the iron posts at the foot of the bed. He looked straight at me and grinned. I skipped through the rooms, down the echoing hall, shouting, "Mama!" He smiled. He smiled. He's all there. He's all there. And he was. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, when he's 6, I mean, that's what's crazy. He's going to smother his brother when he's 6 years old. I know. Well, he might have been like, you know, a little older, maybe 6 or 7 or 8 by then, but still. The idiom "all there" refers to mental capacity. So why do you think that is? Why do you think that's so important? I mean, he hadn't said he wanted a smart brother. So why is he so excited that his brother is all there? Like, what do you think is going on there? When he had talked about what he wanted in a brother, he only talked about, like, you know, running around and doing stuff. So I'm kind of curious. Throw in why you think he was upset about that. And he says, renaming my brother was perhaps the kindest thing I ever did for him because nobody expects much from someone called Doodle. And I think this is another interesting question is, can low expectations ever really be a kindness? I don't know. I think that's an interesting question we could ask because low expectations, on the one hand, you're not going to disappoint people and you're not going to maybe feel pressure, but you also may not try. I don't know. Okay, if he wasn't all there, he wouldn't be a particularly good companion. Okay. All right. I just like to pause sometimes, look at your answers, especially because apparently I have a hard time advancing. What I really need, y'all, is I need 2 monitors or to be able to split the screen, and I really can't do that on mine. So low expectations are a modern day Eden. Tell me what you mean by that, Drew. Like, then you just stay there and you can't progress? That's interesting. If that's what you mean, interesting. Yeah, without pressure, do better. How are you going to do any better? Running all over the place if the person doesn't even interact with anyone. Yeah. I think you guys are right. To discourage his coming with me, I'd run with him across the ends of the cotton rows and careen him around corners on 2 wheels. And sometimes I accidentally turned him over, but he never told Mama. And like, because he doesn't want to not go, right? Like he doesn't want to not go. And I think this to me is some of the saddest thing. Like just this kid being just wanting his brother's attention, just wanting to be with his brother so much that he's even putting up with this like bullying, really. And then the narrator says, finally, I could see I was licked. Doodle was my brother and he was going to cling to me forever, no matter what I did. So I dragged him across the burning cotton field to share with him the only beauty I knew, Old Woman Swamp. Now this swamp becomes like one of the 3 characters in the story, right? Like James Hurst says. I mean, this swamp, the beauty of the swamp is important because he's going to talk about this. I have no idea why. I'm holding a pen. I have no idea why. And you know what, you guys, I don't have any of my props. I don't know. I could just completely forgot to get my puppets and my prop. I do not have a Scarlet Ibis puppet, but no. Oh, Mr. Vanstar just asked if I want something. No, I'm all right. But I just realized I was holding a pen. I guess I needed a prop. So there's this, oh yeah, oops, I just knocked my brother out of the wagon, right? So, but he finally decides, okay, I'm going to let him in on my life. And after that day, Doodle and I often went down into Old Woman Swamp and I would gather wildflowers, and he lists them. In this story, there are 37 different kinds of flowers mentioned. Hashtag all the flowers. I know, right? Like, it's just like so crazy. Where is Cookie? We need our hashtags. All right. And he said, we'd bedeck ourselves, which love that word bedeck. When you see that word, just remember English is a Germanic language, and that is a very German construct. Decken is like, it's the clothing, right? So to bedeck ourselves, like we're going to dress ourselves. And loll about, just like a laze about, thus beautified beyond the touch of the everyday world. So this word is not actually in the story, but I feel like it's perfect to describe the story at this point of the story. Prelapsarian is a word that means before the fall. It's like the time during the Garden of Eden. So that's so funny that Eden got mentioned here, I think by Drew. Prelapsarian is what we use to describe something that's like a utopia. It's just like nothing bad can happen. Everything is sunshine and rainbows and unicorns and everything is wonderful. And I think this swamp is really a prelapsarian existence for these boys in this part of the story. And then he says, there is within me, and with sadness I've watched it in others, a knot of cruelty born by the stream of love. Now understand, he's not saying born by the stream of love, meaning that it's born out of love, but rather carried. Here, born means to be carried. So it's carried along on the stream of love. So as my love flows, it takes a little cruelty with it. And he says, much as our blood sometimes bears the seeds of our destruction, and at times I was mean to Doodle. And that's an understatement, right? So when Doodle was 5, I was embarrassed at having a brother of that age who couldn't walk, so I set out to teach him. And I'm curious, how much does intention matter? So if you're doing something good, does it matter why you're doing it? And what can happen if the intention isn't pure? Like if you're doing something for not a good reason, does that really matter? Like if he taught him to walk, I mean, isn't that what counts? Does it matter why? Does it matter that he only did it because he was ashamed? All right, here we are at our literary devices. Here we go. Oh, Doug Courtney says intention is everything. Ruh-roh, because his intention's terrible. All right, so here we go. We were down in Old Women's Swamp, and it was spring, and the 6 sweet smell of bay flowers hung everywhere like a mournful song. Let's see if we can find 4 different literary devices in this one sentence. See what you can do. 4 literary devices. What do you see? One of them, I think, I'm not sure you're going to know. Like, I know you will have heard of it, but I don't know if you'll recognize it. So I'm kind of curious. Oh, I'm loving reading your intention comments. The end doesn't justify means intention. Okay. Repetition of and. Okay. Some anaphora there. All right. I don't remember what it's called, but it's there. Yeah, anaphora. Yep. And. That's one. There are actually 5. So I only said let's find 4. So let's see what else you've got. I know that if you guys make me tell you, you're going to just be like, I can't believe we didn't see that. Tell me what you see.
Alliteration.
What, honey?
Alliteration.
Yes. Mr. Go ahead and put in the comments.
I'll let them do it.
Mr. Vanstar found one. Cloudfall found one. Simile, like a mournful song. So we're at 2. Oh, and Deb Coatney found that too. All right, we're at 2. Let's do 2 more. Oh, come on, you guys. Go ahead, Mr. Vanstar. Throw yours in. He saw one. Oh, Cloudfall did it. Alliteration. Oh, she heard it. She heard us say it. Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Okay, imagery. Yes, imagery. Alliteration. Nice. You know what the one you guys didn't find? Oh, yeah. Okay, alliteration. Spring and sick, sweet smell. And actually, the other one is in that same one. Sick, sweet smell is oxymoron. That's going to be sick, sweet. So very good. All right. It seemed so hopeless from the beginning that it's a miracle I didn't give up. But all of us must have something or someone to be proud of. And Doodle had become mine. And this is this intention again, right? Like I didn't want a disabled brother and I want this, right? I needed a miracle. So it's all so narcissistic. He's so self-centered. All right. You're going to get another chance here. Let's look at the literary devices. See if you can find 2. Pride is a wonderful, terrible thing. A seed that bears 2 vines, life and death. What do you got for me here? Can you find them? Pride is a wonderful, terrible thing. A seed that bears 2 vines, life and death. There are actually, let's see, what else can I find here? Yeah, he sees Doodle's triumph as his own. Yeah, he really does. He really does, Michael. Like he's almost like his avatar, you know? Yeah. Okay, juxtaposition of life and death. That would kind of be a stretch. Oxymoron, definitely. Wonderful, terrible, and metaphor, definitely. Pride is a seed that bears 2 vines, so that's good. You could maybe argue the juxtaposition, but it's kind of weak because it's because he's not really juxtaposing them. He's using them more as they're 2 parts of something. They're the yin and the yang. So, all right, lots of text here. Finally, one day, after many weeks of practicing, he stood alone for a few seconds. And when he fell, I grabbed him in my arms and hugged him, our laughter pealing through the swamp like a ringing bell. Now we knew it could be done. Hope no longer hid in the dark palmetto thicket, but perched like a cardinal in the lacy toothbrush tree, brilliantly visible. Yes, yes, I cried, and he cried it too. And the grass beneath us was soft, and the smell of the swamp was sweet. Look at that alliteration. Soft, and the smell of the swamp was sweet. I mean, it's literary devices for days. Okay. Okay. Our laughter pealing through the swamp like a ringing bell. First of all, pealing is a great verb. And then like a ringing bell, little simile. Hope no longer hid. So we've got personification of hope. And we also have an illusion here because Emily Dickinson's poem, Hope is the thing with feathers that perches on the soul. So he's making an allusion to Emily Dickinson's poem about hope being a bird. And then the grass beneath us was soft and the smell of swamp was sweet. So we've got imagery, but also that alliteration. Keeping a nice secret is very hard to do, like holding your breath. And I was curious about this. I was curious about How is keeping a good secret different from a bad secret? What makes a secret good or bad? Kind of interesting. I'll let you guys do that. They did not know that I did it for myself, that pride, whose slave I was, spoke to me louder than all their voices, and that Doodle walked only because I was ashamed of having a crippled brother. And so we come back again to that pride and to that intention. Within a few months, Doodle had learned to walk well, and his go-kart was put up in the barn loft. It's still there. All right, so now I got to throw in this other thing. So analepsis is flashback. Prolepsis is flash forward, right? You guys are just going to blow it away in your regular English classes when you start throwing these words around, because your teacher will be like, whoa, right? So prolepsis is a flash forward. And in some ways, this isn't a traditional flash forward. A traditional flash forward would be where you like meet someone and then you have this vision that you're going to get married to them or something. Oh, I'm loving reading these comments. If you can spread your happiness with a good secret, it's very challenging. Keep it yourself because you want to spread the joy. Yeah, that's true. This though, it's like he's almost interrupting himself. Like he's done this flashback, but now he's bringing us back into the contemporary time. And so it's almost a flash forward, a prolepsis. This is kind of interesting. Okay. And then to help pass the time, we took up lying. Had anyone stopped to listen to us, we would have been sent off to Dix Hill. This is an allusion to a mental hospital. I think it's kind of funny, like to pass the time we took up lying, like it's a hobby. I just think that's funny. So why is it important? I mean, what is the role of lying in the story? Who is lying to whom? Who's lying here? Not just those lies they told, but what other lies are being told here? Once I succeeded in teaching Doodle to walk, I began to believe in my own infallibility. And I prepared a terrific development program for him, unknown to Mama and Daddy, of course, right? Like he's so overconfident in himself. And I'm curious, what do you think? Yeah, I think you're right. The narrator's lying to himself. Which is more problematic? I'm curious what you think here. Yeah, I think that's some of the lying. Success lay at the end of summer like a pot of gold. There's our simile. And our campaign got off to a good start. Promise hung about us like leaves, simile, and wherever we looked, ferns unfurled and birds broke into song, which is imagery, again, of this thing. The protagonist is lying to Doodle with his actions, acting as though he cares, but it's simply his own pride. Ouch! I think you're right, Comfall, and that is ouchie, ouchie, ouchie. All right, so then he says that summer, the summer of 1918, was blighted. So blight is means like, nothing would grow. And there is a disease called blight. It has killed our tomatoes before. And it is World War I that's going on, right? And he mentions in the story all these different places. Chateau Thierry, Amiens, Soissons. And in our blessing at the supper table, Mama once said, and bless the Pearsons whose boy Joe was lost in Belleau Wood. So Belleau Wood is like 5 miles from Chateau Thierry. And it was the scene of, I'll go back to that in a second. But it was a scene of this tremendous battle. The Battle of Belleau Wood really probably turned the tide of World War I. It was when Allied forces, the arrival of the Americans made this huge difference. In fact, the French renamed the wood like the Marines' forest, basically. But it was very, very, very hard fought battle. And the French wanted to retreat. And one of the American Marine captains, he's famous for saying this, Captain Lloyd Williams says, retreat, hell, we just got here. And that's just a famous, famous line in the Marine. You'll sometimes see t-shirts, Marines wear t-shirts from the Battle of Belleau Wood. All right, so whale of a word. The Battle of Belleau Wood was what we would call a Pyrrhic victory. So a Pyrrhic victory is when you win, but at a tremendous cost. And it's an old, like when this guy named Pyrrhus was defeated by won a fight against the Romans, but it cost so much. So we call it a Pyrrhic victory, where you win, but the cost was just incredibly, incredibly high. So do you think that Doodle's learning to walk could be called a Pyrrhic victory? In what ways was it costly? Interested in that. So we came to that clove of seasons. So now we've come all the way back to the beginning of the story. The Scarlet Ibis lights in the tree. School's only a few weeks away. Doodle's behind. He can barely clear the ground when climbing up the rope. Swimming's not passable. We decide to double our efforts. And I'm really curious if they both decided this or if it's just the narrator, because it says, I should have admitted defeat, but my pride wouldn't let me. It was too late to turn back. We had both wandered too far into a net of expectations and had left no crumbs behind, which is an allusion to Hansel and Gretel. So I'm curious if you buy this. Do you buy it that Doodle has also got these high expectations, or is it really just him? But I love that phrase, the net of expectations. How are expectations a net? How are expectations a net? Suddenly from out in the yard came a strange croaking sound. It's a great big red bird, he called, and this is a Scarlet Ibis. It's what it looks like. All right, so watch for the contradictions here. Warning, contradictions. The bird is uncoordinated, flapping, flying feathers. It tumbles, it bumps with a thud. But then once it's landed, it has a graceful neck. It's delicately curved. It's full of grace. It's an exotic beauty. There's this strong contrast here, but at the same time, discussing and describing the same thing. When it was alive, it's bumbly and awkward, but then when it's dead, it has this grace and beauty. Doodle has inherited some, yeah, I think you're right, Pyrrhic. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's sad, Cloudfall. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to look at a coordinating conjunction here. So I know coordinating conjunctions seem boring, but they're like so basic. But they are the strongest type of conjunction, and they're important to get right. They're one of the most commonly messed up things because people don't use a comma. And so then you have what's called, you get a comma, you get these errors in there. And so they link words or independent clauses. And we have these, all of these, for and nor, but, or yet so, these 7 coordinating conjunctions. That's all there are. We call them the fanboys. And for is listed first in our fanboys, but it is not the most common. In fact, it's the least common, but he uses it here. Even death did not mar its grace, for it lay on the earth like a broken vase of red flowers, and we stood around it, awed by its exotic beauty. So he's actually got 3 independent clauses here, 2 coordinating conjunctions holding them all together. So you can have 3 independent clauses in a sentence. Just use those coordinating conjunctions. You could just keep going on. Your teacher might get upset and say you have a run-on, but here he's got 3. So now your turn. I want to see your sentence. Complete your sentence with the independent clause. You've never seen a mnemonic fanboys? I first saw it while studying for the ACT, and so seeing it again is kind of weird. That is bizarre. That is funny, Deb, or Michael. Okay, I am excited to go to English class today. For, so the conjunction for means because. It means because. So I am excited to go to English class today for blank. Or I'll give you another one that you could try. I'm asking for a raise in my allowance for, all right, so let me see what you say. And then I will give you a nice job already because I still have, as you can see, 24 slides and only 2 minutes. Okay, so the Ibis says, how many miles it had traveled to die like this in our yard beneath the bleeding tree. It's like very sad that it had come all this way just to die. All right, so look, you guys. What do you see what I see? I'm excited to go to English class today where we have a depressing and dark story to discuss. It's dark. Let's read it. All right, I'm waiting. Do you guys see this English teacher fail? Do you see it? Mr. Vanstar is nodding his head. Oops, there you go. So symbolism is a literary device that uses symbols like words or people or marks or locations or even abstract ideas to represent something beyond their meaning. So a shamrock could be luck, and a heart could be love. And this is the memorial at Waterloo. And so something could be called your Waterloo, which means it's like your downfall. Symbolism. Yep, I spelled it wrong. English teacher fail. Let's just get it out of the way. The symbolism in here, Doodle is the Scarlet Ibis. And also a lot of people interpret him as a Christ figure. So they go back to the dining table, but Doodle gives this whole funeral. to the Scarlet Ibis, singing "Shall We Gather at the River," and like great personal effort does this. It's very sad. It's like he's premonition that he's like digging his own grave and he wants to be treated well. So they go back out one last time out into the swamp. The black clouds begin to, Doodle isn't literally the Scarlet Ibis. Doodle is the Scarlet Ibis symbolizes Doodle, like he's a symbol of Doodle. Yeah. Should have been Simbo. That's funny. So they get there. There's lightning. There's thunder. It's all bad. And Doodle's already tired, right? He already said he was already tired. He had failed and we both knew it. So we started back home racing the storm. We never spoke. What are the words that can solder cracked pride? Meaning like weld it together. So whose pride's cracked? How? And I wonder how much are we affected by this first person point of view here? Like, is it the narrator whose pride's cracked, or Doodle, or both? Like, whose pride is cracked here? So the rain is coming. There's this bolt of lightning, like a bursting Roman candle, which is a firework, and also a simile. There's all kinds of imagery there, all this noise. And we have Doodle, who had fallen behind, cry out, "Brother, brother, don't leave me. Don't leave me." That is the climax of the story. The knowledge that Doodles and my plans had come to naught was bitter, and that streak of cruelty in me awakened, right? We already know about your streak of cruelty, and here it comes. And he runs as fast as he could, leaving him far behind with a wall of rain dividing him. So Doodle is a Scarlet Ibis. How is the brother like the storm? Doodle's dignity was momentarily lost. Interesting. Okay, soon I could hear his voice no more. I hadn't run too far before I became tired, and the flood of childish spite evanesced as well. So evanesce is a whale of a word. Evanesce means to disappear gradually, to like turn into gas, like vaporize. And it is an interesting word because it's a deconstruct. So the original word was evanescence, and then we got evanesce out of it, the verb out of it. The storm is cruel. Interesting. Yeah. That's a good one. Finally, I went back and found him huddled beneath a red nightshade bush beside the road. And now you're gonna get like all the red imagery. He'd been bleeding. The front of his shirt was a brilliant red. I began to reap, and the tear blurred vision in red right before me looked very familiar. Doodle, right? This is the very end, right? I screamed above the pounding storm and threw my body to the earth above his. For a long, long time, it seemed forever, I lay there crying, sheltering my fallen Scarlet Ibis from the heresy of rain. I think Cloudfall, the protagonist just kept running Doodle down, just like the storm. They're both cruel, not for the sake of cruelty, but by nature. Ooh, wow. Bam. Beautiful, beautiful, that is. So we talked about the regret in the beginning. Do you think the protagonist ends up with the right regrets? Do you think the narrator has the right regrets? And why do you think the narrator doesn't return to the beginning? Usually when you have a flashback at the end, the narrator goes way back to the beginning again, but here he doesn't. He just stops right there. Those were the last words of the story. All right, I want you to vote. Heretic. Oh, well, heresy is anything that is not accepted. Like how, like Doodle is this like beautiful creature. He's seeing Doodle as this beautiful creature. And how can you be like raining on it and be like ruining it and killing it when it's a thing of beauty? That is somehow against God and nature. So he doesn't have the right regrets. Yeah, Michael, I would not want these regrets either. I think like the thumbnail could have looked kind of clickbaity. Did he kill his brother? But I think we could have this discussion, right? Okay, so I've got 5 themes from which to choose. Pride versus love, acceptance versus expectation, disability versus acceptance, martyrdom versus redemption, and the inevitability of death. I would like you to pick one. Which one do you think, if somebody said, I'm looking for a story that really does a good job of doing this. Oh my gosh, you know what? I've had my mic like so far away. Hi, Mike. So what do you think? My dark psyche says that 5 is the greatest choice of theme. All right. Oh, never mourned Doodle for what he actually was, but for what he's holding on to. Curious what you guys say there. And then just a couple more. And we're all like, so sad, so sad. All right. Next class, while you guys tell me your theme, next class, September 24th, and the story, an occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. Was he hung or was he shot? And the hits just keep coming. Happiness. So, okay, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to this for a second so that you can see. Let's see. I'd say that 2 is the, think protagonist, never mourn Doodle. Okay, 2 is the most accurate. Yeah, 2 or 3. Okay. All right. So let me go back to, okay, 24th of September. Excuse me, 24th of September, you got that. And then an occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. You guys, this story is a little longer. It takes the average reader 24 minutes to read. It is probably one of the most famous short stories. Like like Scarlet Ibis, it's included in a lot of stuff. So I think you will enjoy it. It's got a little magical realism to it, kind of, even though it's old, set in the Civil War. Yeah, Dracon, it is weird. And I think that doing it in class will help unweirdify it a little bit and appreciate it. So it's some of the stories I pick because I think they're great stories. And other stories I pick because I know you're going to study them at some other point, and I want to prepare you. I want you to be able to go in, and if a teacher assigns a story, I want you to be like, totally know this. And like your guys' analysis is so fabulous. So love it. All right, 24 minutes. Yeah. So I have a program that I do. I can put in the length of words, and it takes into account the syntax and diction, the lexile, and estimates how long the average reader will take to read it. I do that so that when I'm assigning stuff, I know how much to assign to be fair. So 24 minutes. All right. Well, we will see you guys next time. And I'm really looking forward to it. And I hope you like this story. I love this story. I think there's so much here to confront in ourselves, and how our pride gets in the way of things, and that sometimes pushing isn't always the right thing. So loved it. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you guys so much. And I will see you next month. And I'll end the broadcast here.